Hi and welcome. I'm withh Tanner and I am building a 20-foot catamaran sailboat in my garage, and it's been a while since I've made a video because I've been going through some very hot weather here in Texas, and it's even hotter in my garage. So we're just now in about middle of October and the temperatures are starting to go down. And in this video today, I want to show you as much as I can the process of putting some fiberglass in the bottom of this front portion of the port hull. And in a little bit, I'm going to take the camera and I will position it up here, pointing down into this section. And I'm going to leave the camera there because, well, you know, when I start the fiberglassing, my hands are going to get covered in epoxy. So I'm going to leave the camera there. I might pause the video while I'm mixing epoxy, but so there might be some portions that I skip because you don't want to just sit here watching the hull while I'm off mixing epoxy. But for the most part, I'm going to show you the entire process of putting a layer of fiberglass in the bottom of this hull. So let me move the camera over here and I'll show you what the bottom of the hull looks like before we begin. Here's what the hull bottom looks like before there's any fiberglass put down. You can see that this is a very small and tight compartment, which is why I want to get the fiberglass in here before I start putting more of the hull sides in, because that'll make it very difficult to be able to reach down in here and get this fiberglass at least at the very bottom once both of the hull sides are in place. So for right now, we have this open area here where I can reach in and apply the fiberglass, and this entire compartment is going to be an airtight flotation compartment. So if there's ever any problem with water getting into the catamaran, then this section will provide the flotation to be able to keep the boat afloat. So this is what it's going to look like. I'm going to position the camera later so that you'll have a top-down viewpoint similar to this. It'll probably be flipped around the other way, but it'll be similar to this while I'm putting in the fiberglass. Here are the tools and materials that are going to be used. So I'm using a roll of a 6-ounce fiberglass. This is a fiberglass tape, it's called, because it's already cut to a consistent width. And all I'll need to do is cut this to length. And here's a piece that I've already cut previously. It does have some of the edges are a little bit thick where the stitching is, especially this side. This side's not so bad, but this side has some stitching, and that does show through. So, in areas where it's important to have a good finish, the inside of this compartment is not one of those areas, but on areas where you need a good finish, then you might want to either go over this later with more fiberglass, or some fairing needs to be done. And because this is such a tight compartment, I don't want to have to go back in and sand that all over again, so I'm going to be using some peel ply. So I have some peel ply here. There is no difference between front and back. It works just the same no matter how you put it down. But this is the last layer that goes on top of everything, and this will be covered in epoxy just like the fiberglass. Only what I'll do is I'll leave some of the edges uncovered in fiberglass so I can grab hold of it, and this will actually peel off, and it will leave a textured surface behind that does not need any more sanding. And it's also going to be removing any possibility of aiming blush as well. So that's what I'll be doing. For certain places like this, I think the peel ply is very important. And for cutting the fiberglass, I've got a little electric shears. Turn these on. They're kind of loud, and these work great until the fiberglass sometimes gets caught in this little gap here between the scissor portions, and it's kind of troublesome to get the fiberglass out of there. I don't know if this is just a very inexpensive little electric shears, or if others are better. Let me know in the comments if anybody has similar problems with using these to cut fiberglass. You can actually see there the gap, and I'm talking about right here, that little gap. The fiberglass will get caught in there at times. So yeah, so I've got that. I've also got a very nice pair of fiberglass scissors. They have a slightly serrated edge on them, so these are really good at cutting the fiberglass, and I'll use these to cut the kind of the stray strands that are left over. So I want the fiberglass to be as clean as possible while I'm dry fitting it, so that I don't have to mess around with little pieces of fiberglass hanging off as I'm trying to fit it in place. Let's see, I will be using a couple inexpensive throwaway disposable paintbrushes to spread the epoxy. These are very cheap, and I always try to pull out any loose of the strands here, the bristles, so that I don't, there's still some bristles that will fall out later, but I try to get rid of as many as I can ahead of time. I've even found once one of these little pins here, right here in the metal portion of the brush, fell off on me once on one of the sections of holes that I was fiberglassing, and I was trying to figure out one day, I was like, what is that? It was only later I was looking at the brushes. I think that fell out from these brushes, because it was quite the mystery at the time where that little piece of metal came from. The other thing I'm using is a cake icing spatula, and I'll be using this to put the fillets in around the inside corners. And I use this because it's got a nice radius here, and it's easy to get in and spread the thickened epoxy to get a rounded edge on it. You'll be able to see that. And the process we're going to use here is we're going to put down first a thin unthickened layer of epoxy, brush that all over everything, and then go back and put the fillets in and let that harden just a bit, and then put the fiberglass on top of that. So everything will be going in what's called wet on wet, so we'll get a nice chemical bond in here. And for mixing this, I'm using these plastic tubs now. In an earlier video, I think I was leaning more towards these silicone mixing tubs, and they were great at first, but after a while of using them, I found that the silicone started degrading, and these don't have that problem. So, and they're almost as easy to clean up as the silicone. I've probably used this tub, I don't know, probably 10 times already, and just clean it out each time, and it works well. For the thickened epoxy, I'll be using the well, for the whole epoxy, I'm using the withh system epoxy, and to thicken it up for the fillets, I'm using the 406 colloidal silica. And there's a chart on the back of all these that shows which thickener to use depending on whether we're bonding hardware, general bonding, bonding with fillets, laminating, or fairing. And for bonding with fillets, the 406 column is the best solution for that. So that's what we'll be using, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm going to position the camera, and so you get a top bird's eye view of what's going on, and start putting the epoxy and then the fiberglass in. Alright, we're ready to begin, and I have the inside already vacuumed and wiped down with alcohol. And now we need to start fitting in the fiberglass. This piece that I already have cut is a little short, so I'm going to cut a different piece. But the idea is we want to be able to fit this in here without any major wrinkles or anything like that. So I'm going to try to cut this and lay it down as flat as possible. Now, fiberglass doesn't bend around sharp angles very well, so that's why any of these edges here have been rounded over already, and the fillets will go in the inside edges. So all of these inside edges, even up here, along here, up the sides here as well, anywhere there's an inside edge, that'll get filled in with the fillet. So it's it doesn't have to be exact, but let me try to lay this down in here. It's a little difficult sometimes. I think I've mentioned in earlier videos that my hands shake a lot, so I want this to come up a ways, at least a few inches like that. And let's pull it this way a bit, because I'm going to probably cut this a bit long this way. But I'm thinking right about here. Let me cut that out. I know you can't see it very well. I'm a little bit off camera here, but for right now I'm just using these scissors to cut this, which does a really good job. So I don't need the electric shears for these small cuts like this. Alright, so how are we going to fit this in here? The working space is also a little bit cramped, so I'm trying to get positioned as well as I can. I've got these boards right behind me that are in the way. It's quite awkward. This will take me a while to cut and fit this, so I might end up editing some of this out. But let's see, the general idea here is, see this edge, it'll fold just nicely there. A little bit here, I probably want to cut a little bit off there. Well, maybe just make a cut in there. No, you know what, I'm going to just trim this off here. At about this angle. Something like that. Because I'm trying not to get it to go around these multiple corners. So it'll be fine like that. I mean, it'll bend around those corners just fine. I just don't want it to bend and have to go into this corner. When it's down here, it'll fold up along this edge and this edge just fine. And then up here at the front, right about here, we're going to need a cut. Okay, that'll go in there, and this will continue all the way up here. And let's see, I'm going to make another cut. What I'm looking for here is anywhere I see what would be an overlap, I would cut that so that instead of having a fold there, it'll overlap instead. So I'm just looking for places where the fiberglass is just not laying flat and cutting that off. And then up here, I don't want it to come all the way up here. Well, I suppose I could. I didn't do this on the other side, but I might as well do it over here and just bring this all the way up here like this. Yeah, we could do that. Okay, so we're going to let this piece just kind of sit in here like that. That'll be happy right there. And then, let's see, is this piece good enough for this side? Not really. I need a little bit longer. I'm trying to find a place to use this, so I keep coming back to it. But not yet. And I just kind of, a little bit of eyeballing it and laying it down and using my fingers to mark the place. I suppose I could use a marker, but I'll just pinch it and cut it right there. So that one will go there, like that. This one goes there. And let's see, we need one for this side, over here. So about this long. Yep, that'll be good there. Let me take these out so they don't get in the way. I'll try to place them off camera a little bit out of the way where I can also remember which piece went where. And we want this piece to go right in here. It's a bit of a fold here. I'll make a cut there. I'm going to make a few cuts here. So I think a total of 3 here at the front should do it. Let's see how this lays in here. It doesn't have to be perfect. This area is not going to be visible, so when I say it doesn't have to be perfect, I mean as far as how it looks. I do want it to be perfect as far as being structural. So as far as strength wise, it needs to be perfect, but if there's a few wrinkles here and there, that's not going to be a big problem. Let me make a cut in on this side. About right there. Okay, that should be good. I think I'm going to use this piece here that I've been trying to figure out where to use it. I'm going to bend this around like this and put this one in here eventually. this will come along here like this. I didn't want to come all the way up this high, but maybe it's okay. I'll stay a little bit away from the top edge of this. Yeah, so I think that piece will just fit in there just nice. And let's see. We're going to need another piece to wrap around here. Not too long. We'll need a piece right in here, this way. Okay, and that together with the other pieces should be enough to cover this front and down here. And then we're going to need a piece to wrap around this side over here, the back wall. So for these, I just wanted to wrap around like that. So maybe about here, cut it off there. Wonder if I made that too short. Yeah, by the time that gets tucked into the corners, well, maybe not. It should be okay. Yeah. All right, well, I think that will work. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut a couple more little pieces about a couple inches long like this. I'm just going to have those ready because if possible I don't want to be getting epoxy on my scissors after I start. So I'm just going to have these in standby just in case I need them to cover up a spot that I might have missed. Alright, so let me lay these pieces out now so that I know where they go. Okay, this is the very back. This one goes right there. This is the very front. And this one is this inner side. Okay, so now it's also important to get the peel ply cut and fit in place, because that can also be a mess trying to, I mean, you don't want gaps in the peel ply between the peel ply and the fiberglass below it, because then you lose the benefit of the texture that the peel ply provides. So it's important to also have this ready to go and cut and trimmed to avoid any wrinkles in this as well. So I'm going to start by just cutting a piece of this out to make it more manageable, so I'm not dealing with the entire roll. These serrated teeth on these scissors really help in cutting both the peel ply and the fiberglass. Because as I'm cutting with this, these serrated edges, I don't know if you can see it, but there's like little teeth along the edge of the scissors, and they help to grip the fiberglass and keep it from slipping out of the way while it's being cut. So it really makes it easy to cut the material with those serrated teeth. Alright, so the peel ply I want to go in here, and this one's going to definitely be oversized, but like we did with the other one, I'm going to cut an angle off this side so that this will sit in here like this. Right, how's that going to work? Yeah, that should be good. And then up here, I'm just going to try to cut several slots along the sides here to see if that will help avoid the wrinkles. The serrated teeth also make it a little hard for the scissors to slide along the material. So if you're used to using normal scissors and sliding it along as you're cutting, these teeth tend to grip onto it. Right about in here. Now when I position this in later, I'm going to use this cut that I made here to help align this and place it in so I know how far to slide this back and forth. So right about there is where I want that to be. This might be just too much. Let me just cut this off. The red lines on the peel ply, I don't know if those show up on the camera, I think they will. The red lines on the peel ply also let you know that you're dealing with peel ply, and I guess they serve a couple of purposes so you don't accidentally leave some peel ply behind. It's easy to know that you still have peel ply on your boat, so that's good. They also make nice cutting guides, so it's easy to cut and follow along with those lines. So they serve a couple purposes there, quite beneficial. And we're going to need another cut here. I think I'm going to put a cut along this one also. Okay, let's see, how is this going to fit in here? It might seem like I'm taking a long time fiddling with this, but this is actually, the more time you spend getting this fit right, the easier it's going to be later to lay this all in. So time spent here is well worth it. Yeah, these are just too long and flappy up here at the front. Let me just cut these off. It's hard to see what I'm doing with all this extra material up here at the front. So maybe this will be better. There we go. I think that'll work. Yep, for this first piece, that'll fit in there just fine. I'll probably actually put this last, because with all these little flaps here, it's going to be hard to pull this out. But if this is sitting on top of the other peel ply, then as I'm pulling the other peel ply off, then it's going to grab hold from the bottom of this one and pull this out. So this bottom piece of peel ply will probably be the last one that I apply. Okay, so let's just take this piece, cut some strips out of it. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have several of these strips to go up front here, because I'm not really sure exactly where or how they're going to go in some of these little pieces. I'm just going to have these on standby to go in up here. And let's cut another section of peel ply. And then next peel ply will be going around the edges here. So I'm cutting like another 6 or 8 inches of peel ply here. Okay. And I think where I'm going to want this one to go is like along here, around here, and then this will just kind of follow along the side of the wall. So it doesn't need any folding cuts to it. It'll just follow along the side of that wall just fine. So now I just need a piece to come on this side. So that's really good right there. That'll fit real good. Let me cut another piece about the same width. And then this one will go around here, like this. Just like that. Okay. That together with the extra strips that we have, I think will be good for the peel ply. I've got a couple extra scrap pieces that I can use also. Let me move these out of the way. They might get epoxy dripped on them, which is okay, but if I don't use them, then I can save them for later if I don't get epoxy on them. Okay, so I'm going to fold up the unused peel ply that we've got. We've got all the fiberglass ready. This is the bottom section. I'll put that up there. The fiberglass is ready to go in. The peel ply is cut and ready. So I'm going to now pause the camera a bit while I mix up some thin or some unthickened epoxy, and I'm going to brush that on first. And the idea for that is I want the epoxy to soak into the wood to get a good strong bond with the wood, and it also helps to fill in any little cracks or crevices here. They'll get filled in with the thinned epoxy. All right, and I'm back. I got 5 pumps of the epoxy, and I'm using the slow hardener mixed together here, completely unthickened. And I'm going to pour some of that in here, and then just brush it on. And just soak everything down. Cover everything with epoxy. One other thing that you want to do on this to be aware of, I mentioned avoiding the heat. I haven't been able to do the epoxy work for, I guess, well, since the end of May, so it's going on about 5 or 6 months now that I haven't been able to do anything. There was one day that I got out here and I tried it with the air conditioner, and I had to let the air conditioner run almost the whole day. And I managed to get the temperature down to like about the low 80s, and that kind of worked, but it is difficult to film because the air conditioner is so noisy. And the other thing that you want to do is you really want to be doing this when the temperature is dropping. So even after I did that one section, I had to keep the air conditioner running for quite a while after that, because the moment I turn the air conditioner off, the temperature in the garage starts going back up again. And that's bad for putting fiberglass down on top of bare wood like this. If you've got the wood already pre-coated with a layer of epoxy, then you can do that. You don't have to worry so much about whether the temperature is rising or falling. But on bare wood, if the temperature is rising, you're actually going to get the wood emitting gases. And the moment you put a layer of fiberglass on top of that, those gases, if the temperature is rising, those gases are going to come out and they're going to start forming air bubbles underneath your fiberglass. And that's no good. So if you're doing this, you want to make sure that the temperature is dropping, because then you don't have to worry about your wood outgassing and causing bubbles in your fiberglass. The temperature is important also, because if the temperature starts going above 80, 85 is really about the maximum, but if the temperature gets too high, then it causes the epoxy to cure very fast. It's what's called kicking it off, and you end up not with a very good bond, because the epoxy cured at too rapid of a rate. So having a temperature, the appropriate temperature, is really important. And you can compensate for that a little bit by choosing which hardener you use. That's the nice thing about epoxy, is you can have different hardeners. I'm using the the slow hardener right now, which gives plenty of time for this. The working time is, I think, not in the mixing pot, but stretched out like this. The working time's easily about 40-45 minutes in this temperature right now. So, but that's the time while the epoxy is, I guess, really thin like this. Even after that, for several hours after that, the epoxy will still be thick, or it'll start thickening up. It'll still be sticky, I mean. And you can come along and put another layer of epoxy on top of that, and you'll get a chemical bond. That's what is meant by a wet-on-wet application. When you're applying another layer on top of epoxy, even if it's already become unworkable itself, as long as it's still sticky, then you can put more epoxy on top of it. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going through all the little cracks and crevices and trying to get this epoxy worked in all these places. As well as I can. Later, I won't be able to reach my hands in here because this sideboards will come all the way up. So this is the ideal time to do this work down here before I put more planking on the inside hulls. So, yeah, just going along like this and spreading the epoxy around. It's a really tight situation up here at the bow. So just trying to get it in there as best as I can. I think I've got a little bit more here in the pot. Yeah, so just going along, spreading this out. I'm almost done. I've actually seen other videos of boat making, and there's one that is being made in Japan. I'll put a link in the description. So I've been following that. They're actually building I think it's a 47-foot catamaran, and strangely enough, they're not using fiberglass. Which I've done some hull testing, destructive hull testing, and I found that it's quite easy to poke a hole in up to about a ½ inch of plywood with just a couple hits of a hammer, if that's all it is. So that's one of the reasons why I'm using in this boat the extra cedar planking. So I'm not relying on just plywood. So right here on the outside edge of this is 6 millimeters of plywood, and then I've got this cedar on the other side of this as well. So there's a total of over 1/2 inch of wood, and then with 2 layers of the fiberglass on the outside, that was enough. I could not break that with a hammer, and I hit it several times and I could not break it. But even with the fiberglass, with thinner pieces of wood, like with just 12 millimeters of plywood, I was able to break through that. And just 6 millimeters of plywood, I think it only took like 1 hit to break through that. So the reason that's important, at least that's the reason I'm worried about that, is, you know, if I'm sailing along and I hit something like a log, well, you know, I don't want to poke a hole in the side of the boat if I can avoid it. So, alright, I think that's spread out there good enough. So I'm going to let that cure just a little bit and come along and put the fillets in. It's been about 20, maybe 25 minutes now, and I took the camera off and recharged the battery a little bit, and now I've mixed up some thickened epoxy, and I wanted it about this consistency so it will hold its shape. It's still fairly soft, malleable, but it's kind of like soft peanut butter. So that's the shape, that the consistency that we want. And so now I'm going to use the cake mix tool to start putting the fillets in. Okay, so I find it helps to go from the back end like this, and I just want to spread this out like this. If I need to mix up more, I will, but this is 6 pumps of the epoxy and hardener, and I use just a little teaspoon, or like a tablespoon I should say, measuring for the thickener. And this is, what was it, 14 scoops of the thickener to put in here. So right now I just want to get it out of the, instead of trying to spread it out, I should really get it out of the pot quickly, because this has been mixing up for several minutes now. So get it out and spread it out as quick as I can. That will help to extend the workability a bit. It just keeps it from heating up so fast. Whenever it's all together in one big lump, or one pot, one mixing pot, it will heat up a lot faster. So it looks like I'm going to need more, so I'm just going to get this spread out quickly and go make some more. But get this out first. So maybe next time I'll do 5 scoops. So I mentioned earlier about the temperature needing to be falling. So if you're just going to do this and not be using an air conditioner, or you want to turn your air conditioner off, then the best time to do that's going to be at nighttime when the temperature is falling. And And here in Texas, with the weather the way it's been, that would have meant that I would have to be doing everything at, I could maybe start doing any type of epoxy at 3 a.m. and that's just a bit too late. So it's been really difficult to do this type of work in these temperatures. So, at least here in October, at least for right now, we're getting highs in the 80s during the hottest part of the day. So that means that at about, 5, 6, 7, or even, 10 o'clock p.m., I can start work on the boat and have time to finish at a somewhat reasonable hour. So alright, I don't think I'll need even 5 scoops next time. This is mostly there. I still need to go along this edge, up here a little bit, well, along this also, so I want to get up there. Yeah, I'll go ahead and do 5 more scoops. So I'm going to put this aside, and I'll be back in a moment with more thickened epoxy. Alright, after about 10 more minutes of mixing, I have another batch. You really want to work with small batches when you're working with epoxy, just because it takes so long to mix it, and by the time you get it mixed and get to your work area, a lot of time has already passed. So, plus it's hard to mix large batches with the thickening agent when you have a small tub like this. So it's better to go in small batches and take your time. So again, I'm just trying to get this out of the mixing pot now. I'll spread it out a little bit evener, a little bit more even, I should say, evener. I'll spread it out a little more even once I get it all out of the mixing pot. Now I'm not taking this all the way up because I'm really only interested in getting the bottom section here fiberglassed. So I don't want to go too high. I'll put peel ply on this and come back later and do the sides, and that's when I'll take it all the way up to the top. There's already a small fillet along this top edge over here, so I don't need too much there, which is good because this batch is almost finished. Okay, so let's try to make this look nicer now. It's not going to be the best because it's very difficult for me to get anything with my hands so shaky to look good, but I do what I can. So some of this is, well, not some of it, this is going to be covered in fiberglass, so that will help smooth out some of these lumps that will show through here. But again, this is all going to be sealed up, so it doesn't have to look the best. There will be a access panel or access hatch to be able to get in here, so it's not like this will be forever sealed, but it just won't be used on a normal basis for anything except a flotation chamber. Trying to put the excess up here in the very bow, the very front end, because there's a small channel here, so just fill that in with extra epoxy. I think is a good idea. Okay, so I need to go along and try to get some of this scraped off. So I've got the fillets in, but there's some epoxy on the just outside the fillet that I'm trying to scrape off here. Like this, and try to scrape this off. I think maybe I'll try to use my mixing spatula for this. There's just not a lot of room to work here. But that's okay. That's why we're doing it now. Okay, I'm going to let this cure for a bit, because if I try to put the fiberglass on it now, I'm just going to squish this around more. So I'm going to let this cure. Maybe I'll scrape off a little bit more here and there, but for the most part, this I'm just going to put this back in the mixing container. And yeah, so I'm going to try to clean this up a little bit and then let that cure, and I will be back once that's done. It's been about another half hour, so that's given the fillets enough time to cure. So I'm going to start putting the fiberglass down. So I'm going to line it up with this cut that was made here. And for the peel ply, this bottom piece is going to be the last piece that I put down, but for the fiberglass, this is going to be the first piece that goes down. So everything is sticky right now, which makes getting this in kind of interesting. But I think that's lined up where it needs to be. And that's where it needs to be. Just kind of push this down. I made sure that all of the epoxy was still sticky, even the parts here in the middle that was put down first. So it's not just the fillets that have to be sticky, but everything. It's okay if the epoxy is not workable anymore, but it just needs to be sticky. So try to get this all pushed down here. And I have already mixed up some more unthickened epoxy. That'll go down next. Let's see, let's just get this in here. As best we can. Pushing it all up into the corners and the sides. Okay, so now it's time to put some more epoxy on. And this needs to be soaked all the way through. It'll become transparent once it's fully wetted out. That's a lot of epoxy that I put on the bottom there, so I'm going to try to pull some of that up to the sides here. You don't want to put too much epoxy. So the strength of these bonds is actually in the fiberglass. The epoxy is here to hold the fiberglass in place. Too much fiberglass, you're just adding extra weight with the fiberglass with not a lot of extra strength. So, but it will be waterproof. The fiberglass does, or sorry, the epoxy does provide waterproofing. And I want to make sure that there are no air bubbles. So just kind of squeezing it out. Now I'm just using the brush here. There are actual rollers, special rollers, and I have some, but I think it's a bit overkill with this very tight working area here. So I'm not using the rollers. I'm just going along and brushing it all out and making sure that there are no air bubbles. And I can kind of tell by the color. So like right in here, that wasn't the same color. You could still see some of the weaving in the fiberglass. So once it is fully wetted out and there are no air bubbles, the fiberglass almost turns invisible. So now it's just a matter of going along and brushing it all out. I don't need to wet it all out at once, so I will start applying, like here, I'll apply some epoxy here to this and let that soak in a bit, and then maybe go work on spreading the epoxy up here a bit, and then I'll come back to that in a moment. So working in small sections at a time is important, and just making sure that there are no wrinkles and big air gaps. All of that's important here. I've got a wrinkle I'm trying to work out. Maybe I can pull it here. There we go. Get some more epoxy from the bottom. And spread it in up here. Alright, I think I need to dip into the mixing pot here. And there's going to be another layer of epoxy going on, or not, another layer of fiberglass going on top. So I don't need to worry so much about getting all of this right now. There will be another layer. Trying to get comfortable. At the same time, trying not to drip epoxy all over the boat as well, and the build platform. Alright, I'm going to have to use my fingers here and work some of this out. You have to apply some pressure, and that's where the rolling pins work a lot better than a brush, is in getting that pressure applied to it. Now, there was a bubble right there. Let's work that out. Just take your time. It's definitely important to have gloves. I needed to get a napkin to wipe off some of these stray strands of fiberglass. Alright, well, the battery is getting kind of low on the camera right now, so I am going to pause the video and pause the recording, and I'm going to come back after. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to come back when I finish with the fiberglass and show you the peel ply. Okay, all of the fiberglass is in place, so now it's time to put on the peel ply, and we're going to go with the sides first. So let's try to fit this one in here. Just like this. Again, we don't want wrinkles. Wrinkles are bad. And we also want the peel ply to extend past the fiberglass and epoxy. That'll let us have something to grab onto to peel it off later. So we want to leave this edge like this without any epoxy on it later. Make sure we have enough here to get around the corners. Okay. And this also gets epoxy if there's not enough to soak through already. It's just like you're putting down fiberglass. So you wet it out exactly the same. Alright, I'm going to pause the recording here and continue in just a moment. All of the peel ply is now in, and I made sure to leave some spots here that are not epoxied, so I'll be able to pull it out once it's all cured. And over here on this side, I needed to use some of those smaller patches, but it's all in and ready to be cured, and I'll show you next peeling it off once it's all cured. Well, it's the next day, and this has had plenty of time to cure, so it's now time to get rid of this peel ply. So it really is just as easy as peeling it off. It's quite satisfying, actually. I didn't realize that I would enjoy it as much as I do. And I try to just peel a little bit at a time, just kind of going around. Just take it wherever you can grab it. It's amazing how it actually comes off. The epoxy will soak through the peel ply when it's wet, but somehow it forms a barrier so that after the epoxy cures, it can separate, and the epoxy doesn't really stick to the peel ply itself. And that sound, just now the really rough tearing sound, that was the peel ply itself tearing. So I'll have to try to just tearing a bit along here. So this is actually those red lines. There's still some peel ply in there. So I'll probably have to peel it that way. Let me try this side. Well, I'm going to pause the video so you don't have to sit here and watch me just peel all this out. I'm going to pause the video and come back when it's all done. Alright, all the peel ply is out, and this is what it looks like. There's a nice pattern to it. So you can hear the roughness. And yeah, that's it. So, alright, I'm going to get this posted and you'll be able to see the progress. And I still have, after this, to do all of the other compartments. So I'm not going to record in depth all of the other compartments like I did with this one. So yeah, they're all going to be the same. So I'll probably just post an update or two as progress is being made, but it's really just the same process being repeated over and over again for each of these compartments. Alright, so that'll be all for now. Bye.